Budget coordinator.
Good morning. It's 9 a.m., Monday, February 14th, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First is to review the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Doug, second by Santos. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is items with Planning and Zoning Administrator Eric Furnace. Morning, Eric. First up is discussion and possible action to accept two quotes in the amount of $1,543.77 and $3,926.95 from Lucas Communication for additional network and data at the Muscatine County Attorney's Office.
Okay, we'll take the 1543.77 one first. Change order was added to the project to bring some extra data drops to the individual attorney offices over at the county attorney's office. That was approved on change order 1 or 2. When the contractor came in to do the work, Oscar's people had moved furniture out away from the wall. They did that work over a weekend, so try to minimize disruption to the office operations. Came in on Monday and Oscar gave me a call and said, "Hey, this isn't completely finished yet." We had them lined up to move the furniture. As it turns out, the bid did not include terminating the data from the basement of the county attorney's office over to the admin building to the server room and doing the scan testing. And that was something that Mike, when he wrote the specs, apparently did not include in that. So there we stood on Monday morning with furniture moved, and cables not finished. Bill and I scrambled, got a hold of Lucas, got him down there that same day. They got a quote for me later that afternoon to go ahead and pull the wire the rest of the way through, provide a patch panel, terminate, do scan testing, and I think that was done within 2 more days. I had to verbally approve that. The offices were not really fully functional, so I had verbally approved that, and got that work done so that Oscar's folks could get the furniture moved back against the walls. So that is all done and completed. So just need, I guess, your affirmation of that verbal approval that I had to do.
You want to do these separate? I would move we approve that, quote for 1543.77.
Second.
I got a motion by Jeff, a second by Santos. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes there.
And that did generate some really good conversation about future projects, I think, and preferred vendors when it comes to our networking. It just creates a whole logistic nightmare when we have an electrician doing part of the work on data, and when we've got a really reputable contractor that here in town that specializes in that kind of thing, that we have a good working relationship with, that's able to do the polling, the testing, and the terminations all at once. So
Yeah, I think
forward-
that would have been my first comment would be,
Yeah.
Data's a different world and electricians pulling data communications wire today doesn't make a lot of sense. It's kind of a holdover to the past. And because terminations are the key and testing. And it would make sense that we just separate that and go that as off of one of our service contracts with our normal vendors that know our system, know what's required, because that can be different as well. So I think that's a good learning for future, all the projects. We just separate data cabling and we have our normal vendors do that.
So we definitely made a note of that, so I think future project, that's definitely gonna be the direction we'll go, or I would recommend you would go. That brings us to the second quote from Lucas and the quote from Nelson Electric. With the furniture, the decision to add new furniture and flooring in the center space, where the office support staff operate. Bill and I then took it up to really assess what the needs were, how we would get power and data to the new furniture, to find and locate floor. There's some covered junction boxes, and really assess the power and data needs moving forward. So we had, as well as bringing additional data to that transaction window workstation. There was just a single port there. The intent is to make that a fully functional workstation now. So I had Lucas do a beginning to end quote for extra data to the new furniture, as well as 3 more ports for that transaction window. And we're actually adding a couple extra for future needs too. As you know, we went to an IP-based phone system that's tying up some of the things, more and more data cable. Large expenses usually in the mobilization and pulling, so we're gonna add plenty of data to have fully functional workstations in the near and distant future, hopefully. So that's the second part from Lucas. The other quote was to bring extra data to that transaction window to the new furniture locations, to split where the new furniture will be two fully functional and extra data to an existing workstation where we're keeping that furniture. So, and then likewise for Lucas, the original plan called for a couple very simple power poles and bringing some additional power to the existing workstations. The opportunity come up when we've got new furniture coming to reassess that, because we've got to integrate it, with the new furniture. I did confirm with Oscar, there has been power issues, insufficient power issues at those workstations, tripping occasionally, especially in the colder months if they run the space heater. Sometimes if the janitor would plug in a vacuum cleaner, it would trip stuff. So we had Nelson come in, and we're going to bring 4 extra circuits to that whole center area, so there should be no issues in the future with if there's a need for a space heater, vacuums, carpet shampooer. Split the workstation computer power needs from janitorial needs and more convenient locations on those as well, because we're gonna have those workstations removed. And the Spectre Build is crediting us back for the wiring and the power poles that they had already purchased. And then I'm gonna add an extra power pole from Story Kenworthy, who's providing, one is coming with their new furniture, and instead of having a white one that, a colored white one that Blaine had ordered, and one that's brown from Story Kenworthy, I'm gonna add one so that'll be a slight adjustment to the Story Kenworthy, but we're trying to get this all cleaned up and really coordinated, so it really works well now into the future. So the other quote from Lucas needs approved, and we'll get that going as soon as we can, as much as they can before the furniture is installed. But we're definitely gonna get the transaction window wiring, network wiring in place, so we can utilize some existing furniture and move Sherry up to that location, and that'll be a fully functional workstation, hopefully within the next week or two.
One of the questions I'd have is, and I've seen this done in a number of places. Like, I understand it, I don't understand the whole courts moving to electronic, all that well, but I don't know if there are critical workstations, cause, a number of places that have done this as they've gone more electronic, they've brought UPS conditioned power into those areas, so you don't have brownouts or dies, you actually have soft drops. And I don't know if that's something, if we're going into this process, we should look at. I don't think we have any conditioned power in most of our buildings, do we?
I don't think so.
But anywhere we have critical workstations like that you don't really want to have, you can't afford a drop. That's something I think maybe we can have Bill talk about and make sure we have that facility within our buildings, because we're relying more and more upon technology to provide our services, and you just don't wanna have issues. So, okay, that's all I had.
So yeah, I guess we still need to.
So I would make a motion, we approve the 392695 from Lucas, as well as the 2,850 with Nelson Electric.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I got a motion by Jeff, a second by Santos. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And there will be an actual change order coming from Lane, that's the official credit back on those 2 power poles and a little bit of wiring.
How are we coming on that project? Just waiting on furniture, is that kind of where?
Waiting on furniture. I'm gonna meet with Jim today. We're gonna put together a plan to coordinate the furniture removal, temporary relocation of some of the staff, carpeting, tear out and installation. It's gonna take a little juggling to make that happen without interrupting. But Blaine's supposed to be here this week to knock out the remaining punch list items.
So Spectre Build's pretty much
Yeah,
wrapped
they've
up.
been off-site, there's some punch list things that he's gotta come back and finish, and he had said Friday that he would be here this week to do that.
Yeah.
Minus the flooring.
Yeah. Eric,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
just, how are we coming along on the jail?
It's moving along good. Mike and I are gonna check in with, Dan this morning. Kind of a no news is good news thing. The last week we haven't had any issues pop up. They're knocking out, the things inside. Obviously, there's gonna be a delay. Final grade work won't be done till spring, some additional concrete, but we've got both ends of the sally port open now, or functional. I don't know if they're really using them. They poured some gravel that we could pull through. It's not the best, and obviously not ideal to do snow removal, but the doors, are fully functional. Booking area, is functional. I don't believe Kelly has been back to do the plumbing work for that, mop sink thing yet,
Mop
but
sink.
they've been given the go-ahead. I just left that up to Captain McClure to best coordinate with his staff when they want that done.
So, are we thinking maybe we're still on track for the interior to be in April, or?
I think probably sometime in March, most
Okay.
likely, other than the grade work.
I'd like to,
Yeah, they're doing painting
They're,
and,
they're painting.
perfect.
uh,
Maybe when you guys have a window, I'd like to see if I could take a tour of what's inside or how much we've completed. Once you guys are closer to that, I think it'd be
because
good.
they're pushing hard on substantial completion here, hopefully within a month. I would think they ought to be really close, minus that stuff that has to wait for spring.
Again, I think we talked about too, at the end of the project, maybe having some sort of, constructive feedback sessions to what we can do on trying to improving some of the communications that I think we were challenged through earlier.
I think that is a great idea that staff would covet that type of debriefing, because there's definitely some things we learned along the way, some things that we would recommend we do differently, no matter what approach you take in the
Yeah.
future.
And if it works well, maybe we can create like some sort of a standard process that would be able to be passed on to other projects and other leads beyond yourself. If, Oscar were to take over a lead project or somebody else, I think that would be a good feedback forum to provide for the staff.
Yeah, just let me know when you wanna do that, and we'll bring all the involved parties in and get something scheduled.
I think, continue the path forward, and then maybe as we get done and maybe you find an opening where we can do something, I think it would be good, because the contractors know what we're after, and then we also know what we're missing, any gaps. But as we continue to do bigger projects and take on some of those, I think it just having a process and then having it documented helps kind of identify some of those
Yeah,
gaps.
I will say that, though we've had a few hiccups on all of our projects, it's like you always do, there's always something come up. I would say they have gone better from my perspective than we had in the past. So we're making incremental improvement in the process. We have a ways to go yet, but, that's always good, always good.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Eric. I don't know if you still had a question.
Yes, what kind of time frame are we looking at as far as furniture coming to the county attorney's office, and do we have our carpet, is that gonna coordinate, in regard to making this whole thing come together with supply issues,
So the furniture was originally 20 to 22 weeks when it was ordered, so I'd say we're still probably at that 15 weeks out.
Sure.
That's what I'm gonna sit down with Bill and Jim and try to have a game plan together, and then follow up with Blaine on how we might do this in halves. He indicated they could possibly do this, because we're doing carpet tiles, which does give you some flexibility to do part of
Yeah.
the room and jump over. That's what we've gotta get ironed out, because it's gonna have to be well choreographed.
it's so hard to know when this material and
Well, the
furniture,
furniture-
I mean, it could be
I would think
50
the furniture supplier knows when they're getting their stuff now.
Yeah.
Who is it, Story?
Story Kenworthy.
Yeah, they would know when they're getting their furniture.
What I started stressing to them was to keep in contact and give us adequate time when they start planning on coming, because we are going to need to coordinate, the carpeting, the network cabling, the power, because as you know, that furniture, it's integrated within it, and so our electrician needs to be involved in part of it. Our network cable contractor needs to be involved in part of it. Story Kenworthy's insulation only includes so much when it comes to power and networking, and we have a small window to get it all pieced together if we're gonna avoid disruption to the office function.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that sounds
We're,
good. I mean,
we're in near constant communication with Jim's office trying to get a plan together, so the
Very
goal is
good.
to have that done well ahead.
Very good,
Thank you.
thank you. Next is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the February 7th, 2022 regular meeting.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Santos, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Correspondence, Jeff, what do you have?
Well, on the 10th, I attended electronically, the MPW update, Powering the Future, I think they call it, their strategic plan update. It was very interesting. A good job done by the crew at MPW. I also had a couple of I had a couple of emails on Edgewater situation and the bridge. And then I reached out to the Nature Conservancy as well to see what kind of interest they may have in partnering with the county to try to solve that problem. I think Josh Spees responded to me from the Nature Conservancy and said, well, it's a new area for them, but they certainly have a vested interest in the area, and they'd love to come in and chat with us. So I think if we, at what point we might have a discussion about this and get parties involved in and just kind of hash out what might be options on that. So that's pretty much the end of it. I did ask him if they might have some funding available that they knew of. So they do have lots of grants available and such. So started that conversation anyway.
Okay. I as well attended the MPW Power Breakfast, had some emails on the Edgewater issue. Also on Friday the 11th, Bi-State had contacted me about if I would want to participate in a tour of Lock 15, which is currently dry. And they're doing maintenance on Lock 15. And so I did accept that offer and went and toured that, and it's so interesting. It's just incredible. It's just absolutely incredible to go down. You actually got to go down in the lock through a flight of stairs, and the individual from the Corps that talked about the workings of the lock and so on and so forth. It was just very informative, and probably something a person may never have another chance to see in any lock. Possibly, you don't know. And there was discussion, of course, about the addition of the putting in throughout the system 1,200-foot locks as opposed to an additional to expedite the traffic through the locks and so on and so forth, and just a general conversation in that regard. But
So Debbie thought of that, Scott, and they could put a complete tow through it at once instead of
correct.
splitting them.
Yeah, because it takes the cycle time right now with a 600-foot lock and having to split it. The cycle time is about 2 hours to get a tow through, as opposed to what it would be obviously if you just slid into a 1,200-foot lock. And
And I'm guessing it'd cut the time in probably make it less than one half that.
oh, it'd be less than half. Yeah.
Because in that 2 hours, you probably got 70% is just splitting them
Yeah.
and putting them back
Yep,
together.
and moving out, moving back, sure. But one thing that really struck me about that was the condition of the lock and the condition of the concrete of the lock. When you look at, you realize that concrete was poured 100 years ago, give or take. And the condition of that and the technology that's different now in that material is much more advanced. But I was just really impressed with the condition of what they built 100 years ago.
Wow.
Really interesting.
That'd be cool to see.
Yeah, that's all I have. So, Santos, what do you have?
Under correspondence, I had the COVID updates that we had from Christy. Also had a email from her team in regards to the new director that will be there at the hospital. Rachel Pohl, I believe, is the name. Also had an email from the IEDA confirming that they are in agreement with June 7th as our date for our housing summit that will be at the Merrill is what we're looking at. The timing of the hours is not going to be confirmed yet. We're still writing up the agenda, but June 7th will be the date for the housing summit too. Also attended the MPW yearly update. One of the I think as you did here, Jeff, I did ask quite a few questions, but my questions were in regards to their plan to want to close down the coal plants, and then knowing that the increase on gas and how their capacity is what they have now, but in 5 years from now, when they start closing down these plants, what is that going to actually do for their cost, and are they looking at that long term, knowing that if we continue to economically grow as a county, what is that gonna also continue to do for the cost for the actual constituent? So they also had they were planning on building a new solar power field that I believe is going to give them about 20 megawatts. In that, it's going to plan on being done right directly in the well field, right where you start going out towards the airport. So very interesting of how they strategically looking at some of those things. Again, the growth of what they're expanding and how much they're doing in their capacity. 20 megawatts is maybe 20% of what they normally would be doing is what they need for production. So a good expansion from them going on that piece of it. Also had a call on Edgewater. One of the calls was interesting in regards to that they had a discussion in regards to looking for options. They reached out to Iowa State University asking if there could be any assistance. They actually got with one of the civil engineering department professors, and they shared that this was a project that they were looking at possibly. So they shared all the information. The Iowa State University team came out with some of their students to take some pictures, and they're looking at seeing if that may be a project that they could take on. I'm in communications with them, and I said, hey, if there's something as an opportunity right now, we are just looking as a board long-term after our budget session to have a discussion. So I think the group there from Conesville is just looking for something long-term if there's a possibility, even if it takes 2 or 3 years. But I think just having Iowa State University involved in that bridge, I think it'd be a good opportunity just to build some relationships, knowing that we're looking at them also as part of the housing discussions that we've had with Iowa State. I'm going to throw this one under correspondence too. On February 10th, I did go to the quarterly West Liberty Association meeting. I did have a discussion with the city administrator. They were asking about our blank ARPA application form that I think Sherry had made up. So I shared with them just some of their discussions. They're still having some budget discussions in regards to that. And that's all I have for correspondence.
Okay. Doug?
I had some emails about Edgewater and the COVID update. That's all I had.
Okay.
Scott.
Any committee reports, Doug?
None.
None? Santos?
On February 8th, I had the Trails Committee meeting. One of the discussions that came out of that group was the American Discovery Trail that I shared with you guys a couple of weeks back now is at House, I think it's House Bill 4878. And what they're asking for in this is at a federal level, they're writing a letter from the committee to the 4 congressional districts that the federal government is looking at recognizing the American Discovery Trail under a long trail called the National Discovery Trail, which it just gives it a different title, but it recognizes it to be able to potentially get more funding under this recognition. Right now, the trail's basically recognized as a bike / trail. It's not anything that they're going to create new. It's already there. It just helps the recognition for it. So they're just writing a letter in support of it, but it'll help, from the Trails group being able to get funding, potentially just, be able to get openings for more funds and grants. And I think that the Trails group writing that letter was a real positive. There was a lot of letters that have already gone across the nation to the congressional groups to try to get that approved. And I think they may send us a copy of that, just recognizing the Trails group, showing that they're sending that forward. That's all I have for committee reports.
Okay. I had no committees. Yeah?
I had nothing.
Okay, very good. Next up is items with the administration office. First thing is action to reschedule a public hearing on the proposed FY 22-23 Muscatine County maximum property tax dollars for general county services and rural county services to Monday, February 28th, 2022 at 9 a.m.
This was originally scheduled for the 21st. However, we had an obligation to publish in all 3 papers. It was sent to them in a timely manner, but failed to get published in 2 of the papers. So this is, we're moving all 3 of those public hearings related to the budget amendment back a week so that we can meet our legal requirements.
Okay.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Santos, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Action to reschedule a public hearing on the proposed FY 22-23 Muscatine County budget to Monday, March 14th, 2022 at 9 a.m.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Santos, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. C is action to reschedule a public hearing on proposed FY 21-22 Muscatine County budget amendments to Monday, March 14, 2022 at 9 a.m.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Santos, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Next is discussion and possible action to approve resolution 02-14-22-01, taking action to set a public hearing for Monday, February 28, 2022 at 9 a.m. on a proposal to enter into a general obligation levy improvement loan agreement in an amount not to exceed $3,400,000 to finance the Muscatine Louisa Island Levy Project Phase 2.
Move approval.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? This is a roll call vote. Jeff?
Aye.
I vote aye. Santos?
I vote aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is discussion and possible action authorizing the chair to sign an agreement with Dorsey regarding bond counsel services to be provided for the proposed 2022 general obligation levy improvement note in a principal amount not to exceed $3,400,000.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Doug. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next up is action to accept Jamie Boston's resignation from the Muscatine County Historic Preservation Commission.
Yeah, I read his letter and I appreciate his service and I would move to approve. I thank Mr. Boston for his service.
Did you second that, Santos?
Yes, I did second that, and I was just gonna comment that I appreciate his time on that.
Yes.
We'll have to reach out to try to continue to get another replacement for that.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Anything other, Nancy?
I don't have anything else.
Nothing else? Next is receive information from county employees. Do I have any county employees wishing to address the board?
Let's give you a quick update. On Tuesday night, I did attend the Lower Cedar WMA meeting. We are gonna have a hiring committee out of some of the board members there to discuss the coordinator position. As you're aware, that was one of the major reasons we were pushing for funding. We talked about funding from all the different member entities. To date, only Muscatine County and Cedar County have moved forward with dedicating some of their ARPA funds for that. The other cities and counties have not indicated that they're gonna use those funds for that. However, Johnson County is, as you know, everybody's kinda in the same boat as far as their budgeting schedule, cities and counties both right now this time of year. There does continue to be good contributions though, being dedicated from the different member entities. Johnson County is up their annual giving to $10,000 so they're a year. So they're not using ARPA money, but they're gonna be kicking in a fairly significant amount of money yearly towards that as well. So I was asked to be on the hiring or on the committee to explore the coordinator position. I think mostly because we put forth a pretty good chunk of money and it's probably appropriate. So we're gonna discuss what that looks like. We're gonna talk about options from maybe contracting with a COG for those services versus trying to hire. It's a challenge to try to find a person that's qualified that is willing to commit to a coordinator position that's based on grant funding or doesn't have a solid stream of revenue. Dedicated people hot positions a lot that are in those positions because they're often grant funded for a limited amount of time.
So you might mention like Jen and her position, where she's from and what she does there,
Yeah.
so the board's aware.
Yeah, so Eastern Iowa, COG, right now is a partner with FIRA Engineering in developing the watershed management plan. They have a person in Eastern Iowa Council of Governments that does contract with a couple of the other watersheds for coordinator services. So that's gonna be a discussion if that isn't the more, a better way to go, because otherwise you're looking at someone having to become the employer of record for a coordinator. Whether that's one of the cities or counties, IT needs, travel needs, transportation, how that looks like. So we're definitely gonna talk about maybe just contracting to an agency that has a person that's already experienced or specialized in that.
So in the last 2 to 3 years, as this kind of group has progressed and gone after some of the grant funding available, I would say there have been 3 or 4, probably 4 key individuals. I mean, Eric has been right in there, and I remember the guy's name from Cedar or Lynn County, but he's a paid Lynn County employee. He's similar to Eric's role. Then there have been also 2 other individuals, Mary Beth and Jen. Mary Beth is a watershed coordinator and does it to this one on a volunteer basis.
Right, she's with the city of Cedar Rapids.
But she's city of Cedar Rapids, okay, so she's got a full-time gig, but she's very knowledgeable. And then Jen is part of the COG is there, so I think that Eric has mentioned this as a potential, because Bi-State has had one of their people attending most of the meetings as well. And, they're more connected to this world of federal grants and the grant funding potentials and grant writing and control. And I think that is a good project. Santos, I think we mentioned when we had that meeting down at the levee, that the legislator, I think, is starting to understand, and they're pushing, I think somebody mentioned, was it you,
They're
Santos?
pushing, yeah, they're
That
pushing
the
for more of a
state
watershed.
The DNR to fund watershed coordinators on a watershed basis rather than individuals. So I think this is all new turf, and I like the idea of contracting with a COG for it. So Eastern Iowa COG would be comparable to Bi-State. So it's the same kind of thing. You have a few of them running around here.
And there is at least one, I don't recall if he's a senator or representative, but at least one legislator that has indicated willingness to support legislation for the DNR to fund watershed coordinators at the state level in Iowa, which would really solve a lot of problems long term. A set of standards, maybe a salary or a rate of compensation across the board, and give some assurances to the people that would want to enter into those positions that there's a secure funding stream. That's part of the challenge when you try to hire a coordinator is you tell them, well, I've got a 2-year grant or a 3-year grant, and they don't know about the security of their employment.
Yeah.
So there is significant, it's gaining traction though. Watershed management authorities are definitely gaining traction across the state. There's the cities and counties and even the state are seeing the value in them. And then when you start talking about comprehensive projects like levee and drainage districts, it all maybe will come together into a system that makes more sense and works comprehensively.
Yeah, and when you see local governments, we can't continue to fund, every watershed that, I think Cedar Rapids or Marion, was it Marion? Had how many different, they had like 3, they would be in 3 different watersheds, and if they had to, that just gets to be a little bit dicey for a local government to participate in that many, so it makes more sense to have a coordinated approach from the state on this.
Okay. So just an update on that. I think hopefully with the amount of funds that we did dedicate from ARPA, that we'll have hopefully a kind of a powerful voice. I mean, that is one advantage I think of offering up that kind of money, is that hey, we're gonna insist on some good safeguards and some good practices here as part of this, and the group seems to recognize that and wants us at the table now for sure. So just an update.
All right,
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Any other?
But I would just mention to the board that I've asked Eric to take the active part in that, because it's more in his technical expertise than mine, and he's done a great job for the county there.
I think long term, we talked about eventually seeing, legislation or even discussions about watersheds and drainage districts. Is there any ways that those groups could even have some sort of, you know, spot at the table to have ways that we could, you know, improve those communications. I thought was really good when that group, when that legislator was there,
Yep.
so.
Okay. Any other county employees wish to address the board? Comments from the public? Anyone from the public in-house that would like to address the board? Seeing no one come forward, we are adjourned.